Hello, this is DC Hammer and welcome to the DC Hammer Show. The Washington Examiner is reporting that Iran is directly responsible for the deaths of 608 American troops in Iraq. So this comes as no surprise that during the last 15 years that all of this activity has been going on over in that area, that Iran has been directly responsible for the murder and maiming of numerous American military members in that area of conflict. A new report indicates that at least 17% of all the deaths of U.S. personnel in Iraq from 2003 through 2011 were caused directly by the Islamic State of Iran. This information is backed up by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Marine Corps General Joseph Dunford. And although under the previous administration, whenever there was hearings about what was going on over in Iraq and the fact that Iran was causing much of the bloodshed over there, we now have factual information coming forward that clearly outlines the amount of death and destruction caused by the Iranian regime. And yes, the sanctions that President Trump has put on Iran after that failed no-deal Iranian nuclear deal, when he pulled us out and put us on a course to success by using elevated sanctions, clamping down on the oil that Iran was able to ship out of their country, and preventing other countries from ignoring the requirements of the sanctions in order to keep the Iranian regime afloat. And as the Pentagon spokesman indicated, and I quote, "As we have done from the start, we will continue to call on all nations to join us in restoring the basic demands on Iran to behave like a peaceful nation. This includes ending its pursuit of nuclear weapons, stop testing and proliferating ballistic missiles, stop sponsoring terrorist proxies, and halt the arbitrary detention of dual citizens." The spokesman went on to say that after the United States withdrawal from that no-deal deal, what was called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the only joint involved in that plan of action is everyone around that table must have been smoking joints when they signed it on behalf of the United States. Oh no, I'm sorry, nothing was signed, so I take that all back. But anyway, the spokesman is saying that the actions of the Trump administration and what they have done since that withdrawal have helped contain Iran's activities, including its ability to fund terrorism and to prop up its allies and proxies in the region. Thank you again, President Trump. And Pamela Geller in her Geller Report is reporting that many of CNN's national security analysts have undisclosed ties to pro-jihad Qatari regime. So I'm sure that's difficult to understand if you go back in time to the original Gulf War. And the United States, as they were shocking and awing their way through that country, bringing down Saddam Hussein, CNN had their reporter Bernard Shaw on scene, and CNN's people had information that would have been important for the United States military to know in order to properly carry out military operations during that military campaign. And when Bernard Shaw was asked to share that information with the United States military, he refused. He said that he considered himself a citizen of the world. Well, now, come forward all these years, and it apparently at CNN, that approach to the quote-unquote news, or should I say the propaganda from CNN, has not changed. Pamela Geller has been pointing out for years that the media elites, and she calls it the media, they're not genuine news agencies, but propagandists for the far left and apologists for jihad. And she points fingers and discloses information in order for us to understand exactly what that means. Qatar is a center for terror funding and is a chief Islamist enclave in the Middle East. But you wouldn't know that if you watch any of the reporting from CNN, especially when they bring on their contributors, such as Ali Sofan, prominently featured on their network. And it turns out that he has a direct connection to the Qatari regime. He is executive director of the Qatar International Academy for Security Studies. Based in Doha, Doha is the capital of Qatar, And Soufan has a quote-unquote personal relationship with the top leadership of Qatar. It's good to know that he knows who's calling the shots over in that terrorist regime. The report then points to Mehdi Hassan, who has been a long-time reporter for Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera was the favorite network of the head of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and they pump out a steady stream of pro-Islamist, anti-Semitic propaganda, almost like the Democrat Party today in the United States. And he works for Al Jazeera as the Qatari-owned media enterprise that advances the interests of the state and its royal family. And what does that mean? Well, the promotion of the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood founded Hamas and is responsible for a lot of the terror that goes on in that part of the world. And then there's Juliette Kayyem, who turns out that she's a board member of the International Center for Sports Security, front group that's controlled by Qatar. So if you consider terrorism a sport, she's the one to go to. And finally, this report points the finger at Peter Bergen. And although he doesn't have a direct link to a Qatari state institution, he's a regular visitor to the tiny, energy-rich nation and pushes blatant pro-Qatar propaganda when it comes to Middle East affairs, commenting almost laughably at one time, here's a quote, "Qatar looks like a far more natural ally for the United States than the Saudis." Right. You can take that one to the bank. And if you haven't already done so, I recommend highly that you go to Crowdsource the Truth site run by Jason Goodman and listen to his 18-minute interview with James and Joanne Moriarty. The Moriartys were in the oil business, and back just before everything blew up in Libya, they were in Libya near Benghazi when everything was starting to fall down, and they are eyewitnesses to much of what took place over there. And this most recent interview in the series of interviews that Jason Goodman has done with them once again highlights what took place in Benghazi and with the 4 Americans that were killed there, including the assassination of the ambassador, Chris Stevens. And if you watch this video, again, with people that really know what took place there, James and Joanne have deep contacts within the Libyan people, especially the people that have all the connections and know exactly what took place and where the bodies are buried. So recommend highly that you watch that. It'll be very illuminating. You'll be able to connect dots and watch other material that includes interviews by James and Joanne Moriarty. And as you do that, you'll understand why, whether Hillary Clinton continues to insist or not, it does matter these many years later. And don't dare say, what does it matter at this point, to someone like Charles Woods, the father of Ty Woods, who gave his life in that compound trying to save Christopher Stevens and the others. Learning the truth about what took place in Benghazi is going to be critical in the weeks that come, and as rotten deep state onion is peeled back and we start to learn what really took place during the Hussein administration and the culpability of Hillary Clinton and others in all of the scandals that took place, none of which were covered in any detail by the Marxist screaming media. But the truth is coming out. You can't leave it buried forever. For it is written in Luke 12:2, nothing is covered up that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. Thanks for watching and listening, and God bless. And now the DC Hammer Show is available as an audio podcast. Just go to Podcast Garden or iTunes and search for DC Hammer or News Narrative Analysis Associates, NNAA.